Ya Allah, grant me anything that is most pleasing to you. Ya Allah, grant me anything that is most pleasing to you.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Nabiyallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. So my dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, today our topic is the conflict between parents and children. So inshallah, a very interesting topic, inshallah. So before we start on this, let's try to make some good intentions to attain reward. It is mentioned in hadith that a believer's intention is better than his action. So whenever you're watching a silsila on Madani Channel, try to make some good intentions to attain reward, that you are watching this for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain knowledge, and inshallah we will try to pass this knowledge on to others as well. Let's start by listening to a blessing of sending peace and blessings upon the best of mankind, the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Shaykh Tariqat Amir Sunnah Damat Barakatum al-Aliyah mentions in the method of ghusl that the best of mankind, the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam has said, recite Durood Sharif abundantly upon me, it is purification for you. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So my dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, today our topic is the conflict between parents and children. So inshallah, a very interesting topic, a vast topic you can say. Majority of the houses today, in our homes, in our society, you find that there's not an understanding between the parents and the teenagers, the youngsters. And what are the causes behind this? What's the effect of this having upon our society, inshallah? We have Dr. Saab with us, inshallah. Dr. Saab will be covering the psychology side of this, inshallah. Parents and the teenagers, this war, this battlefield, you can say, in our homes. First of all, where does it all start from? Where is all the misconcept created? How it is created, you can say?
It is a very interesting topic, and it's a topic that, as you quite rightly said, that will be affecting most of the households. And there is a conflict between parents and their teenage children. And we are going to cover both of them, to be honest, the viewpoint from the teenager side and viewpoint from the parent side as well. And let me be clear from the start. I think the parents are the ones who may need more guidance on this. Times have changed, and clearly the mentalities have changed. Most of the parents who are today, they are either they migrated from the Indian subcontinent or other sort of Asian cultures and the countries, and they maintain that mentality the way they were brought up. And even if it's first generation parents who were born here, but their mentality in terms of parenting is very much similar to the mentality of the culture that they've come from.
Dr. you're just talking about, you're going to concentrate more on the parent side and them being at fault most of the time, you can say.
I said they need more guidance.
You said the parents are more in need of guidance. And how are you able to say this? Because normally you find a person who's lived a longer life or more of his life, he would have more experience. So wouldn't you say that the parents would have had more experience, they would have had more understanding, whereas a teenager child won't have that same understanding? So
I would like to use this psychological term called cognitive dissonance. It's a very mouthful word, cognitive dissonance. What does it mean? And I think that is the main psychological reason behind the conflict between the parents and the teenagers, or the parents and the children in general. So what is this cognitive dissonance? Although we've covered this in some other silsilas of the Madani Channel previously, but I would like to explain it again. When we are very young, we trust our parents. For a child, his parents are the most trusting people in their whole life.
Oh, that. He'll come run. The child comes running always back to the parents.
Exactly. You know, a child is basically trusts the parents so much that they actually give their whole life in their hands. When the child is picked up, and you know, usually little children, we throw them in the air, but they are so confident, they have trust in their father or mother that they will not let them fall to the ground. Now, there comes a point when this trust that the children have in their parents is actually affected by the parents themselves, which is why I said that they need more guidance. Why is this trust affected?
Can I just ask here, what sort of age you reckon this
I'm
trust?
talking about from, let's say, anywhere from the age of 3 to 4 onwards.
So very young age.
It could even be well before that as well. Because a child's mind, Allah Azza wa Jal has created in such a way that it is absorbing the experiences from the environment, even though you actually may not be saying those things. So what happens is, basically we realized, and everyone will agree with me, that when a child makes a mistake or we want them to rectify something, we say to them, beta, don't do this. Now, whatever this is, it can be anything and everything. Don't do this. When the parents say to a child, don't do this, whatever that behavior was, now the child expects that their parents will also not do that behavior. Whatever it may be. Smoking, praying namaz, sitting down, walking, doing this, doing that. Very common example. For example, in this day and age, parents tell their children, don't use the mobile phone too much. The child will say, but Baba or Mom, Dad, you use your mobile phone as well. So there is a contradiction between what the parents are telling their children and what the children are observing. This contradiction between what the parents say and what the parents do is what we call as cognitive dissonance, because what happens is that in their mind, they expect exactly the same behavior. Children expect exactly the same behavior from their parents, what the parents are verbalizing. When the parents do something opposite to what they are verbalizing, this actually causes distress in the mind of that child. And it affects that relationship of trust, because the child, after observing it few times, I can't quantify this, that how much and over what time period, but when the children are consistently or on numerous occasions observing that what the parents are saying is different to what they are doing, this causes psychological distress in the mind of the child. And let me explain to you that, for example, we would come across many times when someone, they broke their promise. They said they will do this, but they didn't. I will get deeply affected by that. It will make me emotionally angry. It will make me emotionally upset. And I will then begin to, and if it happens a couple of times, I will not trust that individual.
I can understand where there's places where father says to his son or the mother says to his son or daughter that don't do this. For example, lying, this is understandable. But there's times when, the parents say to the child, you should sleep early so you can get up early. And the child is sent away to the bed and the parents are sitting there and the child knows that the parents are not sleeping early on time. And would this also have a...
Yeah, this is also part of the training, because what the parents need to say is that as we get adults, parents do get certain privileges, which the children do not have those privileges. And parents need to teach the children, and they need to reduce that distress, and they need to explain. But unfortunately, what happens is, for example, a question that was put to myself by my son. He's only 7, and I said to him, you can't use the mobile phone for more than half an hour. And he said, Lekin Baba, you use your mobile phone for so many hours. And I said, well, I explained to him the medical reasons, I explained to him the needs and so forth. I explained to him that I'm a grown up, my body parts are not going to be affected as badly as your body parts, because they are actually growing up, they are more delicate. I use sort of other pieces of evidence to show to him that, this is why I'm actually allowed to use it more than you. And if had I not explained that, then my son would not actually trust me on this. And it is this lack of trust. Who's responsible for it? Parents. They are the ones who actually broken that trust by saying something else and doing something opposite to that. And this trust then remains in the mindset of the child, and the child is constantly observing this dissonance. And this is the main reason, as per my understanding. Yes, there are other reasons as well. We should not take it simply that this is the only reason, but this is the most important reason, that parents then, what they say and what they do is opposite to what they say. And this is one of the root causes that why the teenagers will then go against their advice.
Just for the viewers of Madani Channel, alhamdulillah, some of the Madani pools which we are learning, beautiful thing here is when you are telling your child not to do something and you are doing it yourself, always explain them why it is for you to do this action and they not to do. Alhamdulillah, Dr. Saab has shed a great light on this, and it's a thing which we don't normally do. We will do them actions in front of our children, and our children are seeing this, they're observing this, and this is having an effect on their mind.
In most of the cases, there will be rare cases when you will have to explain something, but in most of the cases you will be at fault if you're not doing, because what you need to do, you need to do. If you are telling your child to pray your namaz, you need to be praying your namaz. If you are telling your child not to lie, then you can't have an explanation for speaking a lie in front of the child. You will then be deceiving. So there are a lot more things that we have to do and demonstrate in front of children to keep that trust. There are very few things where we'll have valid explanations, but wherever there is a valid explanation, we should then explain to the children.
So Dr. Saab, alhamdulillah, you've covered the side that when you're doing things in front of your children and how they are observing this, and they're watching you, and if you're doing something else there and you're telling them something else, it has an effect. So when their parents say something to the children, they're always expecting something from them as well, isn't it? And what sort of causes these have when the child is expecting the child to listen to everything they've said?
As parents, Allah Azza wa Jal has given us the authority to bring up our children. And this is also the accepted norm in the wider society as well. Even those people who do not have a religion or do not follow a religion, they also have the expectations. The parents have the right to bring up their children as they want to. Whatever values they hold, whether it's religious values, social values, moral values, ethical values, the parents have the right, because they are the ones who actually brought, they are the means of these people coming into the world, and they have obviously spent sleepless nights, and there's a lot of effort, the energy, the money and everything, and lots of emotional sort of upheaval. So one would expect that the parents have the right to bring up the children that they want to, and this naturally leads to parents having certain expectations from their children. Now, clearly there is a long list of expectations that the parents can have. However, there are certain areas which are very sensitive, which are very delicate. And if I were to mention one or two of them, the major ones are marriage. Parents expect their children to marry where they want them to. And the profession. And the profession. Parents want their children to do what they do. These are the two major things that the parents have expectations. But if you look at it in the current climate, the culture that we have in Western society, or even if now, the whole world has become a global village, and most of these values, they have shifted into Eastern culture, if I could say.
Doctor, before you go on regarding talking about these issues like marriage and the degree or the profession of that child, this is something they expect. But if you look at, if you go back a bit into a younger age, there's an expectation of parents for a child, whether he starts to turn 5, 6, 7, in the matters of his behavior, right? The parents want him to behave excellent, him to be sitting there, not moving an inch. And this is also a great part of expectation. And then this is causing a sort of infliction between the child and the parents, because if the child doesn't sit there, he gets up, the parents are, you know, having a go at him, shouting at him, stuff like this. So there's expectations even at that age as well.
I would actually use Nigrane Shura's words of wisdom in this particular situation. Yes, parents have expectations all the way along. We are today going to focus on teenagers. Nigrane Shura, very beautifully, he said that when we have an expectation from a child, we are actually viewing that expectation from my point of view. For example, I'm 40 years of age. So I will use my own experience and whatever my life is, and I would, based on that, I would expect my child to behave in that way. What Nigrane Shura says is, go back in your time. When you were 7 years of age, you know, compare that behavior with your child, and that will resolve lots of problems.
You know, that's actually a fact. It's something which I look at, and when I see my child behaving like this, and when I hear the stories regarding myself, I couldn't sit calmly, you know. So,
and unless you go back in time and you compare your 7-year-old behavior with your son's 7-year-old behavior, you will actually get into trouble. Why? Because when you go back, you will understand, you know, okay, whatever he's presenting with, he needs guidance to actually change it. Whereas if you were to think it from a 40-year-old man with a lot of experience, and he's comparing his son with other children, and you can never compare with other children. So you will get into troubles and difficulties. So coming back to the teenage,
there are some expectations, Dr. Saab, which, for an example, parents want the child to be clean, tidy, him to always hang his clothes, him to always have his room cleaned. How would you take this type of expectation?
No, clearly this is a beautiful expectation. This is a very useful expectation, and this is where the parents need to use strategies. You can never be angry to promote a good behavior in a child. You become angry, then it creates difficulties for the child to learn that behavior. Rather than being angry, like we in the previous episode covered, the conditioning, the giving reward. So you set a goal to the child and say, this is the goal that, you know, in this week we're going to try, when you come back from school, you're going to take your clothes off, put the home clothes on and hang your clothes. Give them 1 week, 2 weeks, and say, if in this week, if in the first week you can do it 3 times a week, you will get a reward. And if in the next week you can do it 4 times a week, we'll give you reward. When in the following week, 5, and so forth, until the behavior becomes, this is a way to instill these good behaviors, and you can use this reward mechanism in all forms of behaviors. And sometimes you can use, obviously, what I defined as a sanctions. If after 2-3 weeks the child is still struggling, then you can put sanctions in. You can take their privileges away. So that's another way. And I think, I mean, for these good expectations, yes, definitely parents are right in instilling these behaviors in the children, but their approach must not be an angry or aggressive approach. Their approach must be positive approach.
So going back to the side of expectations in the matters of profession, everyone seems to have this mindset, I want my son to become a doctor, I want my son to become an engineer, I want my son to become a pilot. You know, we used to hear this when we were children, you know, everyone wants their son to be a pilot. Right?
I mean, it's a cultural expectation that if my son didn't become a doctor, then he will be a stigma. मैं किसी को मुंह दिखाने के काबिल नहीं रहूँगा, या my son doesn't become an accountant, or my son doesn't become a lawyer, because there is a trend. If the father is a doctor, then the children want to be, or the expectation from the other society is that his children will be doctors as well. And there is this pride that we see, that if someone himself is a doctor and their children have become doctors, and they feel proud, and they actually, you see this being displayed wide openly in our gatherings and so forth.
Dr. Just a personal question here. Was your parents expecting you to become a doctor, or did they have this expectation regarding you?
It's a difficult one. I think Yes, there are doctors. My uncle is a doctor.
Okay.
To an extent, it was my personal ambition as well to achieve something.
Mashallah.
But also, there was an expectation, although it was not a direct and wide open expectation, but I could feel there was an expectation that I should become a doctor as well. But I would say that I embarked upon it based on the ambition to prove that I can achieve something.
Because in normal cases, when the parents are doctors or they have that sort of profession or any profession, they want their child to gain that specific type of profession. For example, a father is a scholar, he's a Hafiz of Quran. Most of the times he wants his child to become Hafiz of Quran or a scholar of Deen as well.
What happens is the parents are not wrong in having these expectations. However, it's the approach, once again, it's the approach that they use. For example, my child, his mindset, his thinking, his behavior is in my hands. My child is like a molten iron. I can mold it the way I want to, up until he becomes an adult. Once he's become an adult, he's baligh, his brain cells have matured. Now that iron rod has hardened. If I was not able to mold it before this level of maturity, now there is no way I can mold it. So my request to the parents is that if you want the child to become a certain way, then you need to have, first of all, the valid reasons for this. The valid reason, obviously, beautiful teachings of Islam. What you want them to be is the right thing to do. Now, we do need engineers, we do need doctors, we do need, highly skilled professionals, especially in the Western countries, so that they can do much more for the beautiful religion of Islam as well. But what happens is that you've not done your hard work in those early years. You've not explored these things with the child in the early years. You've not made the mindset. You did not mold them. Now they have come to an age and you want them to do something and they are not bending. This is a recipe for disaster.
There's an example of this I've seen personally, I've experienced in life. There was one brother who actually gave that mindset to his child that I'm going to send you away to become a scholar of Deen. And as this child grew, he started from an early age, probably the age of 5, 6 years old, and he would always put this into his children's mind. And they got up to the age of 10, and the child would start asking the father, when are we going to be sent away? So it was sort of put into their mind. It was, like you said, molded into their minds. And on the other hand, is another brother was also seeing that, this brother is sending his child away to become a scholar. Now he had not done that process and giving that mindset to that child from a young age. So he also tried to get his child ready, and all of a sudden the child just turned around and said, look, Dad, I'm not going.
I mean, this is very common, and what unfortunately happens is that children, they feel forced to do things. Not everyone has the sort of wisdom, not every child has the wisdom to actually convince their parents to go in the other way. So eventually the children will then start the Dars-e-Nizami course, or they will come to Jamiatul Madina. But what we see, these children, because they were not motivated themselves, they've been forced to do it. Now they will present with all sorts of behavioral difficulties. They will give the teachers a hard time. They will mess around in Jamiatul Madina. They will try to create problems so that they can be kicked out, and then they can tell their parents that, okay, I mean, I couldn't actually become successful, and now I can do whatever I want to. So there are children who will try to do it. There are children, mashallah, if they've had the good upbringing, and sometimes the children, I would say, if they can if their parents, now this is for the teenagers, if the parents are asking them to do something, don't just blatantly close the door, because this is what happens with the teenagers. Yeah. One of the things with the teenager, which I don't blame them, and the parents need to understand this, their personality is developing. Teenagers, they cannot see into the future. Teenagers, or up to the teenage years, they live right here, right now. You can give them, hundreds of explanations to look into the future. Biologically, chemically, psychologically, whatever, genetically, they are not framed to think in the future, in the long term, which is why they make spontaneous decisions. And that is something that we have to actually accept, because sometimes we overprotect our children. For example, I'll go back in time, Ji.
Just on this, Dr. Saab, you're saying teenagers don't look into the future, or they don't have this concept of looking ahead. But the father or the mother can use an example. When we were your age, we used to plan like this. So they would come out with these sort of things in front of the children, because the viewers of Madani Channel, it might be going something through their mind. Okay, but when we were that age, we were planning ahead. Whether to buy a house, whether to settle down and do this, do that, have this in place, have this in place. So
yeah, you were planning because your parents would have actually given that tarbiyat to you, given that mindset to you. And if I am giving that mindset to my child, then he may be able to, with help. Obviously, I'm not saying that no one can think, but clearly, if you had that, I'm saying that mostly what the teenagers will be in this climate that we are living in, they will actually not be thinking ahead into the future. They will have their own mindset that this is what I need to do. But even for that mindset, someone would have made their mind. So my advice to the teenagers is, when the parents suggest something, don't close the doors. Keep the option open. Try to explore it. Try to explore that option. Look at the positives of this expectation. Look at the not so positive things of this expectation. Then also what you want to do. Look at the positives, look at the not so positives. How you can do it, you can speak to the people and get the advice from, for example, a father wants a child to become a scholar of his deen. He wants to become a doctor. Now, neither of them are budging. What I could say to the teenager is, obviously he's 15, 16 years of age before they can make the decision to go into university or into Jamiat al-Madinah. Go and speak to someone who's a scholar. Ask them what is good about being a scholar. And what are the sort of not so good things. Alhamdulillah, there is nothing not so good about being a scholar. But from a cultural point of view, from a society's point of view, from financial point of view, try to take in as much information as possible. And then go to a doctor. Go and speak to them and say, this is the dilemma I'm in. What are, you tell me, what are the good things about being a doctor? What are the sort of, I can definitely tell there are so many side effects of being a doctor on your family, on your, other commitments and so forth.
I was just going to say, a doctor would normally say he will give the positive side, and a scholar would say the
clearly,
positive
when you
side.
speak to the doctors, they will encourage others to be doctors. Yes, doctors, from even from a religious point of view, a tabib is someone who can actually relieve or cure them, or try to help them to overcome their disease, which in essence is a great rewarding act. Now, one thing that I was going to say is that sometimes we are overprotective of our children. We don't want them to make a mistake. But I would say, given the right environment, let the child make the mistake. Sometime by making a mistake, your child will learn something that you will never be able to teach him. For example, in UK, parents have radiators, central heating radiators or fireplaces. When they have children, little children, you will see in the household, when you go, you will be able to tell there is a child. There will be a safeguard in front of the radiator, there will be a safeguard in front of the fireplace, and there will be a safeguard in front of the stairs. Now this is very delicate. I'm not saying that everyone should apply this. If you have the skills, you can apply this. For example, we want the child not to touch the radiator. What you could do is, you could set the temperature very low on the radiator. Let the child touch once. Once the child touches, or what you can do is, You can try to imitate this for the child. You touch the radiator and you go, oh, very hot, very hot. These are the two strategies you can use. Let the child either make the mistake or you make the mistake in front of him to imitate. This is something hot. You will realize that this child will not touch the radiator. I can tell you, I did not have these stairs rail guards in my house. Why? Because when I realized that my children are now crawling, I taught them how to get on the stairs. I taught them how to come down the stairs. I did not have, I'm not encouraging, clearly, this can be a big safety issue. But what I'm saying is that I'm demonstrating by an example that sometimes you need to let the child make a mistake. Now, clearly, as a parent, we have to safeguard that this mistake that they're going to make is not going to be life-threatening. It's not going to be a major thing. But sometimes you have to let your child, make their own decision and then learn from the consequences of that decision and be there to support them. This is another thing. Okay, the child says, I want to do this. And he does not become successful. And now is the time to get the revenge. Never get the revenge. Now your child needs the support. Now is your time to actually enter into his heart fully and say, okay, beta, I fully support you. You wanted to do this. Let's look at what happened that you actually could not succeed. What you could do differently. What do you want to try now? These are the sort of golden opportunities to get into the heart of the child.
You mentioned that the child has a goal. The parents want him to do something else. What's the sort of middle grounds because I know this topic can go on, but we want to sort of finish off with the silsila. But what are the middle grounds of this where parents can be happy, the children can be happy? How do you create that middle ground with them?
I would say, first of all, the parents need to sit down and reflect that this expectation that they want their child to fulfill, should they actually be forcing this on their child? And they take advice and guidance from, the experienced people in the society. And I would say the best people who are experienced, as per my own personal experience of these individuals, a mufti. A mufti of Islam is the most experienced people. I can tell you with my personal experience, alhamdulillah, through the Madani environment of Dawat Islami, I have extensive experience of sitting with ulama kiram, extensive experience of sitting with muftiyane kiram, a fair amount of experience of discussing the modern dilemmas that we face in the society. And when I speak to a learned mufti, I get amazing responses, and I get surprised how much experience these individuals we have. And I was thinking something completely different about a mufti, but what they are saying is so logical, and it many times resolves my problems.
Just before you go on, Dr. some viewers might not understand the terminology mufti. If you could just explain regarding...
Muftis, obviously, we have, first of all, I sometimes compare it with the medical profession. So like you have a consultant in a specialist field, is what a mufti is. So you become a junior doctor. So after becoming a scholar, you do this takhassus fil fiqh. And after junior doctor, you become what we call a registrar. So this Islamic brother who's doing a takhassus fil fiqh, afterwards, after 2 years of this course, they then start writing the fatwas and so forth. And then after many years, when a registrar becomes a consultant, now this person who's giving fatwas, he's become a mufti. And this takes about 10 years after the scholar course to become a mufti. Somewhere around 8 to 10 years to become a consultant. The consultant is someone who can give a diagnosis and a treatment independently. And in the according to the teachings of Islam, this is called a tabib haziq. So you have to refer to a consultant. You're not going to consult a junior doctor on a final diagnosis and treatment. You have to refer to the specialist. So similarly, mufti is a specialist in field of Islam, and they have so much experience of dealing with these issues, and they would have hundreds of people coming to them with these issues, and their advice, I think, for the parents is priceless. And the parents in this situation should consult with the mufti sahab, and I think that will resolve a lot of issues.
MashaAllah, my dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, alhamdulillah, we have heard a lot in regards to how the difference of views from the teenagers to the parents, and how the parents should be dealing with the children, the teenagers, and how the expectations and the sort of expectations we have for our children and what effects it has on them, and same with what the parents, the children expect from their parents. We haven't even covered that at the moment, but because of short of time, inshallah, we will try to cover these sort of topics. So, dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, try to continue watching these silsilas on Madani Channel, and continue watching Madani Channel, inshallah, where you can gain lots of benefits in regards to the knowledge and understanding and different experience of different people in how we can improve our society, starting from our homes and then going into our society. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to follow these pearls of wisdom and able to improve our homes and our society. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam.
Ya Allah, grant me anything that is most pleasing to you. Ya Allah, grant me anything that is most